Now, let's talk about shopping. An apology first. When I was a girl and I learned to shop, literally at my mother's knee, I could go to the mall. And that mall, even in my suburban town of 70,000 people, had 3 stores at a minimum where you could find a quality wool suit. A quality basic wool suit, completely lined in a basic color. I remember this because I remember trailing from one of these stores to the next store to the next store as my mom very, very carefully evaluated which of those suits she would be investing in, because it was an investment. Why am I apologizing? The mall's still there. And in exactly 0 of those stores can you buy a wool suit. The highest end store at that local mall, and now there are 200,000 people in my city, will sell you polyester. And we've already talked about polyester. So, where am I going to find a nice basic wool suit, if that's what I need? Well, I'm either going to drive down to my nearest major city. For me, that's San Diego. And yes, I have to drive all the way to San Diego proper because there are only a few stores here. There's one mall that carries that high end of clothing. One mall. Because that's important for this conversation. The department store, which used to have this sort of selection, really doesn't anymore. You're going to be looking at independent shops. So you may or may not have a few independent shops in your area that you can go to. That would be my first hit, honestly, because again, this whole thing is very tactile, and you want to feel the clothes, you want to look at the clothes, you want to try the clothes on, if at all possible. But if you can't, which is going to be the majority of people watching this video, online. Because those same small shops exist online, and they've gotten rid of their overhead to survive. And honestly, you can get deals online. Of course, you're going to have to dig. But I've got some bookmarks of where I can get Harris tweed jackets from England. And quite frankly, the prices are good enough that price versus quality, they're about half again as much as one of those polyester jackets. And that's the highest quality wool that you can find. Again. But then you have to, of course, order and try it on and end up sending things back, and it's a huge pain in the behind. And again, this is not what's in the books, because all the books, especially the older books, assume that you have them all and you can go try things on and you have opportunities and options. And no, you're going to have to do it online, which gives you a world of options, and it makes it much more difficult and annoying to do any of it. It is what it is. So, what do you need to shop online? You need a good tape measure. You need to not only know what your measurements are, not your vanity measurements, your real measurements, but it's very, very helpful to flat measure garments that you like, because very often you'll find garment measurements, they'll have like the flat measure of the front or the back at each point. And that can be very realistic. So if you can put a similar garment on your bed and flat measure. Flat measure means you don't measure all the way around, you're just measuring in 2 dimensions. You can get an idea, okay, this is how much. And then you're going to have makers, as with everything, different makers have different size ranges. I find everything from Asia tends to be a little smaller. I even had clothing custom made for my husband and I in India, which is an option. And that is a surprisingly budget-friendly option. But you want to be very, very careful with the measurements because like everything came up just like a little small, like just a little bit off. It was very strange. I'm not sure quite what happened there. Maybe I should have measured in centimeters instead of sending them the measurements in inches. Maybe that would have been a better thing if I'd sent things over in metric. I'm not sure. It was consistent. I had a place where I was buying dresses online that were custom made, and I just learned that I needed to add a couple inches to the measurement from shoulder to waist, because that goes over your bust, and it would be just consistently a couple inches short. So I just started adding that to my measurement, and it was much better. So that's something to know. I tend to steer clear of anything in China. Fair or not fair, we all know that there are a lot of sweatshops in China, and quality control is iffy. I mean, you might find a gem, but you're more likely not to. And we're not even going to discuss fast fashion here, are we? All right. But there are a lot of domestic places where you can order nice clothes. Some of these will be brand names that you might be familiar with, like Pendleton Wool. You can buy a basic, suit skirt at Pendleton Wool. Now, obviously, you're going to buy things. You're going to buy them for your biggest measurement, whether that be hips or waist or length. And you're going to look and see what's, adjustable. And you're just going to accept the fact that especially for tailored garments, you're probably going to have things altered for you. So that's just a consideration. So, thus for online shopping. Where else do we shop? Well, I got this at a high-end reseller. If you are interested in thrifting or reselling, resale options, my recommendation is to go to the wealthiest town in your area and check shops there, because the input levels will be higher, therefore your clothing levels will be higher. This also strangely applies for like discount shops like Ross or Marshall's, like TJ Maxx. I mean, I assume we all know about the Good Marshalls. I know about the Good Marshalls. If I drive to Del Mar, you all can look that up in the San Diego area if you want to, where home values are, in the tens of $1 millions. Even the Marshalls has designer names. It has nicer clothes. So if I want to drive a certain distance, I can get some discounts. Now, of course, you can also invest in in quality pieces if you have that ability, and if you again have the ability to access them. You can learn to sew. I sew a lot of my own clothes, and now they've closed Joann's, which was a terrible place to buy garment fabric anyway, but that was the last fabric store that sells anything but quilting cotton and hobby fabrics. And so that's going to be interesting. I shopped online anyway, but yes, you can always sew. You can also alter things that you have found at thrift shops, etc. But that's a bit getting into the weeds. So we're talking about those acquisitions. If you are, I would not shop anywhere that doesn't have an excellent return policy, because there's a good chance that you're going to need to return it. Colors on your screen are not always true to colors in real life, so you might get things in. Is that really your color? Is that your best color? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. So, be prepared to send a lot of things back. Lauren had another piece of excellent advice, that you just leave the tags on for 3 days and don't make a decision. So you get it, you try it on, and then you wait 72 hours before you decide whether you're keeping it or sending it back. That would probably be really good advice for me to take. I don't, but You know, sometimes you get it and you're like, oh, this will work. And then like day 2, you're like, well, maybe that's not totally the best. But in my case, I've already laundered it. To launder every single thing you acquire and it is dry clean only. Always. They put chemicals on fabrics to make them look nice. You do not want these chemicals on your skin. Everything must be laundered unless, again, it is dry clean only. And those things tend to not go directly on your skin. All right, so we've talked about our shopping, and let's take a quick jaunt into outfits.